Hello, my friends. This is a response given to a specific question about chronic neck tension. I'll do my best to give a overview of a specific practice series that I'll be offering in a separate video. It will just be a follow along with me practice set for people who have chronically tense neck musculature and chronic pain in that area. That will be something that you can do alongside your regular snake and turtle practice. And I find that it should be very helpful for everyone who needs to do it. I'll also include afterward a discussion on common causes of neck pain and chronic conditions that tend to lead to what we think of as pain in the neck. And so let's start with the movement series. A description first, and again, a practice series and another video. Begin by understanding that the neck itself, when it is released on all sides, has the capacity to lengthen upward. There is a sense of softening upward, not because you push the head up or because you pull the chin back. That's simply putting tension elsewhere in the neck. Instead, soften the front, soften the sides, soften the back of the neck. And notice this feeling of the head floating upward. A release from the top as though being drawn up by a thread. Then from there, releasing the back of the neck, allow the chin to come down. And then softening up. Now, as we create this movement, the head comes down, and it's possible to do this movement by tightening the throat. Instead, I prefer you to practice softening the back of the neck so that the chin drops down. But again, not because you contract, but because you release. And the same on the way up. As you soften the throat, release the throat, but don't contract and crunch the back of the neck. That's a very different kind of practice. First we soften up, create that space and length, which we'll do with every movement, and then release the back of the neck so the head drops forward, return to neutral, soften long so that length reappears, and then soften the throat. As you create this movement, it's also possible to emphasize softening the jaw. Because I'm talking as I do this, it's a little harder to describe. But if you release the jaw under here, if I exaggerate it by pushing forward, you can see my jaw move forward. You don't want to push, but you do want to release in that area, so there's an extra bit of length that occurs beneath, inside the throat, and underneath the jaw. That's a very useful way to begin. And then, if we start by saying yes, then we say no, and simply look to the left and right. This is a way to begin this exploration. And in this same way, rather than contracting one side to pull over, what we would prefer is that you soften this side, which releases your head and neck this direction. So if I look to my left, my right side is releasing. If I look to my right, my left side is releasing, rather than pulling here. You also want to be certain that you're not tilting your head, your shoulders aren't coming up. Left and right. In the same way, now that we have started moving the neck a little bit, created a bit of movement, it is useful to shake the head a little bit and the upper body. We call this shaking the willow. And you can imagine that if I was to take you by the top of your head and shake you this way, and the ripples traveled down your body, or as though you were a tadpole swimming through the water, leading with the head. Just soften the neck and shoulders. And again, this will be more evident and obvious to see in the practice video. And as well, during this positioning, what you want to do is to open your arms to the side. You're not drawing your shoulder blades back, but rather you are correcting a tendency to collapse forward here. So the arms move to the side, the palms turn forward, and then soften the shoulders down. The palms remain facing forward all the way down, so that it softens this line and it softens the shoulder blade at the same time. This is not drawing your shoulder blades back or rounding them forward. This is moving them to return to a neutral position. And that neutral position will help to release this chronic tension that we have here in the neck. So with this positioning, soften through, releasing the tension within the neck. We begin by moving up and down, side to side, very simple movements. And then we want to make it a bit more difficult by many Western people tend to not move in this direction. By the West, of course, I'm referring to my own experience within the United States, but many of the people who arrive from varying cultures around the world incorporate this movement in their daily lives. And I've noticed that for the people who do, they have fewer levels of tension than the people who do not. This is a direction that tends to be frozen in the people from the cultures where I tend to come from. And what we want to do is keep the head vertical, the face vertical, the chin, the nose, the forehead, all in alignment. And you want to shift them all over to one side. This may be awkward to see on the camera. Back to center, and then to the other side. And back to center. And notice that I'm not tilting. We'll do this movement later. But rather, maintain this verticality. One side, then the other. And you're not pushing back, you're not twisting your head. It's as though your head is simply placed to one side and then the other. And then we'll do the same kind of movement, maintaining this verticality in a horizontal sense. You'll push around in a circle. As you do this, in the same way that moving to this side, I don't want to pull here as much as I want to release here. When you make this circle, as my head moves forward in front of my body, soften the back of the neck. As my head moves back, don't crunch here, but rather soften. Both directions. For many people, this will take an amount of practice, but it is a very natural human way to move. The next movement is more common for people. You'll want to make small circles with the top of the head. Starting very small. And with all of these movements during the practice session, because again, this is simply the discussion period, you want to start very small and only increase the movements as large as feel perfectly comfortable. That do not increase the tension, but rather relieve it. Softening the throat so that the chin lifts a little bit. Softening this side so your head tilts. Softening the back of your neck so your head drops down. Softening this side. And on the practice video, you will find it is easier to see how this movement can easily incorporate the whole body. And that is something that you'll find consistently, of course, within the snake and turtle Qigong practice itself. So you would do that in both directions. Very simple. Remembering to maintain this open position of the shoulders. Don't allow things to start to roll forward. And speaking of rolling forward, we will now begin to create a movement this way with the head. Opening the throat slightly, the chin moves forward. And then softening the back of the neck, chin drops down. Opening and softening the throat, coming up. Shoulders are in a neutral position. I am only using my hands to be able to point and demonstrate. And you'll do this in both directions. You can also come this direction, making a circle so that the chin drops down, comes forward, underneath, up, and back, softening the throat, softening the back of the neck. Don't pull your head back by creating tension here. That's what we're trying to heal. You're making an opportunity for the musculature to disentangle and your joints to open. So be careful and take your time. And at the end of all of these, you can always again create this movement where your shoulders are open to the sides. This is a neutral position, and you can create that movement where you're shaking your neck out a little bit. If you feel like there's any tension accumulating, always take the opportunity to relieve it and release it from your body. Otherwise, we're just creating more problems than we are solving. And of course, during the snake and turtle form, all of these movements are found throughout, and it is worthy of study if you tend to have this chronic neck tension. And as you find your way through the typical snake and turtle form, hopefully you've already watched all of the introduction videos for them, the movements themselves have all of these qualities within them. They're just a little bit more complex in some ways. They're asking a little bit more of you. So it can be nice to find them here before you attempt them regularly within the form, so that you're not creating more problems as you practice than you're solving. And so those are the basic movements of the neck releasing series. It's a very simple series. You should do them every day, twice a day. You can do them as often as you like, as long as you are not generating more tension than you are releasing. And it's worth talking about what the neck is when we're talking about the movement of the neck. The neck isn't simply this structure here, but rather it attaches, for instance, at the base here. So the movement of the neck relies upon the freedom of the upper spine. The movement of the neck relies upon the shoulder position, that if my shoulders are tense like this, that braces and inhibits the movement and expression of the neck, and can lead to pain. If I have a lot of tension through here, for instance, that gripping will pull down and deform the shape of my neck, which of course leads to pain. If my jaw is very tense, that will change the shape of all of this, and of course lead to chronic tension, stiffness, and pain, which is what we are trying to relieve. And so understanding that the neck is not simply this area here, but all of the areas associated with it that allow it to function and heal, we can begin to understand the direction that neck pain can come from and why it is being generated through the body, through movement and our lifestyle. One of my favorite ways to recommend that people do some self-healing with the neck is through keeping the neck warm. It is very common that people allow their neck to become cold, or they have allowed it to become cold in the past. Maybe they did some icing on the neck when their neck was stiff a while ago, and now that cold, in a sense, is lodged in there, creating this contraction, this stiffness, this pain, this poor circulation. And to heal that, you simply add warmth. And many people have found that if their neck is becoming warm, they feel a little looser. Maybe they take a warm bath and suddenly their neck and upper back are soft and loose. And that is a really good sign. And I can recommend, in fact, a warm bath, some time in a sauna or a spa if you have access to them. If you find that that helps you, then begin to add heat regularly to the neck. And there are neck pillows that you can buy or create for yourself that you fill with seeds or various things. Throw it in the microwave, warm it up somehow, put hot water in a hot water bottle, and then wrap that around the neck. And for many people, they find that that actually relieves the stiffness in their neck. And if you find that kind of capacity then to suddenly have flexibility, do that before every time you practice the snake and turtle set. Do that throughout the day until you find that that stiffness and tendency toward contraction goes away because you've warmed the coldness. That is a really simple and inexpensive method for pain relief. There are, of course, things like acupuncture that can work wonderfully well, liniments or creams or oils that you can buy. Go ahead and visit your local traditional Chinese medicine shop, for instance, and just ask them about something that you can apply to your neck. Make sure that you like the smell and the feel of it, because they're all a little bit different, and see if that helps you. Often that's a really cheap and easy way to find relief, and you might as well find relief. There are massagers, thumpers that you can use that release back and do local massage on you. Of course, there are human massagers as well, if you have the means and the opportunity. finding a good therapist can always be very helpful. But if you have access to a mechanical massager of various sorts, some that act like thumbs that work on an area, some that use vibration, some that use rolling motion, find the one that feels the best to you and that you actually like, because of course that's important. There are varying levels of sensitivity and taste, and see if that helps. And that again is an inexpensive, relatively inexpensive, and easy way to heal. You should take the opportunity when it arises. In traditional Chinese medicine, we talk about, again, cold, but also wind creating problems with contraction. And if you are somebody who is in the wind very often, especially a cold wind, I recommend wearing a scarf or wearing a hoodie of some sort. Just a jacket that protects that area, a high collar. Or for people that have long hair, you've probably noticed this is very helpful. Keeping this area warm and covered can help a lot with neck stiffness, especially during the springtime or the winter time when you're exposed to these cold and sudden winds. Take the time to go out, cover yourself up. It becomes late fall, and you flip up your collar. It's still warm outside maybe, but the wind is coming. And just protect yourself from it and see if that helps with local neck stiffness and pain. The same is true with emotions. Many people find, for instance, maybe they've been driving too long. Driving, that's another thing that can cause neck stiffness. But within driving, perhaps you are developing anger. You're in traffic. And that anger rises, that emotionality gathers. When that happens for many people, what happens is their shoulders grip, their jaw tightens, and their neck stiffens. And it's like a dog with the hair on the back of their neck, or a cat when their hair stands up. All of this tenses through here. And taking the time to relieve stress is very important. And if you find that emotions are related to a stiff neck, then you have another way to heal. And there are many, many things that you can do for emotionality being stuck and causing trauma in the body in this way. But it is important that you recognize the cause of your stiff neck so that you can treat it appropriately. There are many useful acupoints, pressure points, that you can use to heal that are more effective than others. Locally, on the hand, for instance, a nice thing that you can do if you're sitting, in a chair and you don't want to look like you're massaging your stiff neck, if you were to find these two knuckles here and draw a little triangle up, a little higher on the hand. There's a hollow just above the knuckles in this space. That's a point called luojin, and it's referring to a stiff neck, and it is very famously useful. You can do it on either side. Sometimes the more sensitive side is the better one. But spend some time working in that while gently moving your neck, and you might find that it is very relieving. But also, again, you can follow the self-massage sequence that is in Snake and Turtle, and you can use your fingers to work the local sensitive areas. So I will start at the front here. The jaw, again, can be related to tension in the neck. So take time to ease your jaw, moving your way around. If this is the base of the skull here, there is a point, a sensitive point for many people if you find it with your fingers or have help from a friend. Massaging back into those sore spots there. Just behind the mastoid bone here. Further back, there's a larger hole that you can press your fingers into. On top of the musculature at the base of the skull, you can massage that point. And in the very center in the back, there's a really useful point just at the base of the skull, at the top of the spine. That whole line that travels in the way that my hat is traveling around the base of my skull, find time to massage in there with your fingertips, or again with a friend, or with a machine, or a device of some kind. And all of those can help to relieve the tension. The same here with the top of the shoulder. We can say halfway between this bone and the spine. If you were to draw your fingers down, you might find that there's a sensitive spot in there. And you can work that with your fingertips. And just behind that, if you were to lift your arm, there's a small hollow that often appears up here at the top of the shoulder. That's another good point to dig your fingers into to help release this tension that tends to occur in the neck. And as well, as you find your way back, depending on how easy it is for you to move your shoulders or to convince somebody else to do it for you, at the level of the top of the thoracic spine here, at the base of the neck, where those meet, and the musculature tends to bunch up in this line, there's a series of points that can be massaged all the way back in through there, depending on your flexibility and the ability to reach them. And spending time there each day, all along this line, all the way out, can be really helpful. And you can even end out on the hand at this point here. By adding this series to your regular snake and turtle practice, just stimulating them, helping them to release and open, all the while keeping them warm and protected from the elements, these things can be very, very helpful. And I recommend taking the time to explore them and incorporate them into your practice. It's very useful to use, if you can't quite reach them, a device like a cane that circles around that you can reach and massage that with. You can, on a wall or on the ground, place like a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball, depending on how hard you like that ball to be, and then allow it, you press against the wall and allow it to massage those points. You might find that very helpful as well. And recognize that the health of the neck is part of a whole body alignment. That you can't really separate within postural practice, as you've been discovering from your regular Qigong practice, as I'm hoping you're engaging in. That the upper part of the body is not unrelated to the position of the lower body. So for instance, if I lock my knees, that forces my hips to move forward, which causes my lower back to round, which causes my upper back to round, which causes my neck to move into an awkward position. Now my neck has to be stiff just to hold my head upright. If I spend time trying to release my neck while I have my knees locked, it's almost impossible to do. Just as an example. It becomes even more complicated when you begin to tilt the body and create twists and turns in it. Then all of this strange stuff starts to happen through your structure that has to be disentangled before the tension can actually release. And again, this is all part of the snake and turtle practice and any kind of regular Qigong routine. But you have to understand why this here may be related to something happening down there. Always include the whole body within your understanding of any localized discomfort, because all of you is important. Let's see. Common causes. I have a little list written here of the common things that I have seen just within the clinic. And of course, these are nearly endless. So you'll have to find out what can be the cause for you. But I'm going to list some of the most common things in case for you it rings a bell and you say, oh, maybe this is causing my stiff neck. And one common is for people that have long hair, if they walk around when their hair is wet, and again that cold and that moisture causes local contraction as the body protects itself from the elements. So perhaps drying your hair before you let it down, or finding another way to deal with it. A very common way for people to develop pain through here is famously in the car, they reach, maybe they're driving, and they have a bag in the back seat, perhaps a purse or something they need to get, and they reach behind the passenger seat into the space behind them to lift it up. And this very famously causes shoulder and neck pain. So maybe keep your bag in the front seat, or find a different way to retrieve something from the back seat, rather than exposing yourself to this very awkward and famously damaging position. Poor posture, of course, is a very famous cause of neck pain, which is related to, for instance, the locking of the knees that I mentioned. But if you slouch all the time, this, of course, will cause neck pain. There's a phenomenon that we call tech neck, which is people on the computer or on the phone like this. And so they kind of are living in this position. If this is you, if you recognize this and there was an uncomfortable laugh that happened when you saw this kind of thing, then please find a different way, a different sized chair, raise your computer monitor so it's a little more easy for you to relate to. Your keyboard perhaps is someplace else. If you're on the phone, find another way to interact with it than this. If you're picking up the phone in a physical way to hold it in your shoulder and your ear, find another way. This is going to cause more and more neck and shoulder pain, and it becomes really difficult to treat when 1,000 times a day people are creating this habit instead of this one. The same is true, of course, at night time when you're lying in bed. If you have a very strange sleeping position, if you sleep on your stomach or with extra pillows holding you in very strange ways, or there's all kinds of things that people can do in the nighttime, rather than allowing their neck to remain soft and supported in the way that it needs to be in the various positions, this can of course lead to a stiff neck. And this can be exacerbated if it's cold at night, if you sleep next to an air conditioner or a fan or an open window, and that wind and cold again come across you. Maybe you're hot when you start, or you kick the covers off at night, and now that cold infiltrates and your body protects itself by contracting. And so you wake up with a stiff neck. All of these things can be common causes, and they are very easily preventable once you understand why it is happening to you. For people that have menstruation, that cycle can of course lead to a stiff neck, both in a hormonal sense, and people that don't menstruate of course have hormonal cycles as well. But famously the PMS side of things, when you're about to have the menstrual cycle move through again, there's an accumulation, and often that makes people feel frustrated or tense or very emotional, and that can end up in the neck. And for those people that this happens to, you know who you are. And so doing what you can to alleviate that cycle, or in the very least recognizing when it's about to happen, and do these practices, spend an extra amount of time to relieve the root cause so that the neck doesn't end up stiff during those times, if possible. If you swim and it's cold and the water is cold, these kinds of things, this of course will lead to more and more tension. And I do feel like it is worth mentioning that there are a number of very serious conditions that can cause neck pain. And this again will be part of my constant discussion of why it's important sometimes to receive a diagnosis from a specialist or a professional who can use giant machines. And from the time of making this video, who knows what will be coming in the years in the future. Ways to scan and analyze and understand in a deeper way what's occurring. If there's something like disc disorders, pinched nerve, arthritic problems, meningitis, localized virus problems. It can be a virus problem in the sense of the flu or COVID. These kinds of things can all cause joint pain, local stiffness. If you've had an injury, whiplash, for instance, these are all things to understand, to look at. Even various kinds of cancer can arise and cause neck pain. So if you have serious neck pain and serious questions about the cause, and it's not easily pinned down to wet hair and a poor sleeping position, then it's really worth looking and finding help just to make sure that you are safe. Because if you have the ability to receive the help and the means with which to find it, then I recommend receiving that help when you can. It is possible that a poor diet, dehydration for instance, can cause physical spasms. So always look to your diet, make sure you're being nourished, because of course your body will react strangely when it's being poorly treated. You can try a painkiller. Sometimes chronic pain can actually be interrupted with just a dose or two of a painkiller. Again, prescribed painkillers, please. But you may find that if you try a muscle relaxant or a painkiller, something that is recommended by a doctor, that after only 1 or 2 treatments, the pain recedes and doesn't go away, because it was more associated with a chronic cycle that was continually feeding into itself, causing pain. And that by interrupting it with the appropriate medication, that it actually goes away on its own. That's something that can be surprising and wonderful, and that's one of the ways that acupuncture can often help as well. It interrupts a cycle and allows for health to restore itself. In line with the sleeping issues, it can be really common to have a mattress that's not firm enough or too firm, and so you end up with neck pain, or a poor pillow shape. So by upgrading your mattress, by getting a better pillow, a neck support pillow for instance, if you find them and have them available, give them a try. You may find that it's amazingly helpful. If this pain you discover is associated with the sleep, then do what you can to mitigate and heal that condition. The same can be with poor shoes. People that have been wearing comfy-old shoes for a long time, that they really require more support in a certain way, or it's improperly sized shoes, or fashionable shoes that cause a lot of problems and pain, try changing your shoes and see if that helps with the neck pain as well. Going back to the bedroom in the nighttime, poor sleep, of course, can cause neck tension and pain and inflammatory disorders and achiness. And so if you find that perhaps your pain is associated with just not having a good night's sleep, then doing what you can to rest more deeply can make a really big difference. Maybe don't watch a movie before bed, don't eat right before bed, or pay attention to what you're eating right before bed. These kinds of things can all make a difference. And we'll have some videos about sleep hygiene and the ways to sleep a little more easily through the night. But there's a lot of resources online that you can look at to see if sleeping a little bit better, and again, maybe approaching a sleep doctor. And by resting a little bit better, do you find that you have a little less pain? Especially if you find that you have sleep apnea. Those people who are tossing and turning all night long without quite knowing it, they do what they can to heal sleep apnea, and suddenly they're having a full night's rest and their joint pain vanishes. These are all common causes and ways to find your way through to heal. And I do think that it is worth as well mentioning that there are a number of pharmaceuticals that can cause joint pain, and which of course include neck pain. And because pharmaceuticals are so common now, people taking drugs, hopefully again from a prescribed source, and they don't recognize that there are side effects associated with these. And so the medicine that they're taking is actually causing a problem. And you can either go to your doctor and adjust the medication, or in the very least understand the source. And so there are a number of antibiotics, for instance, that can cause achy joints, especially if it is healing you from what you're fighting off, and your body is having a reaction to that process of healing. Many cholesterol-lowering medications, statins, are famous for causing localized joint pain, something like 20%, I'm guessing at the number. It's enough so that it's a common discussion point. And so if you are on those, which of course are very, very common, notice if the joint pain that you're suffering from arose around the same time, and then talk to your doctor about finding a way to deal with your cholesterol problems without taking the thing that causes you pain. Osteoporosis medications, asthma medications, cancer medications, various kinds of treatments, of course. All of these things, of course, can cause joint pain, inflammatory conditions, acne treatments. Famously, Accutane is one that can cause joint pain and localized pain. Antidepressants also can cause them, and which is a difficult decision process because many forms of depression, joint pain arises with those as well, which refers back to the emotionality references that I was discussing before. So all of these kinds of pain conditions can associate together. And so if you find that your depression was causing a kind of achiness or joint pain, then receiving pharmaceutical help from that, if no other form, can be helpful. But if you find that your joint pain occurred once you got onto those meds, talk to your doctor about finding a different formulation and see if that helps your pain as well. Anti-seizure medication, there are, ironically, nerve pain medications, which are often similar to the anti-seizure medications, but nerve pain meds that can cause joint pain. And so if you're trying to treat one pain and another form arises, then maybe look into that and again talk to your doctor about that particular mixture. Estrogen medications, many forms of hormone work can do it. Premarin can cause joint pain for a number of people, as well as high blood pressure medication, beta blockers in general can cause these kinds of discomfort. And again, for all of these, I would never recommend anybody adjust their medication specifically or do anything. I don't know what your condition is. And at the time of this filming versus when people are watching this in the future, pharmaceuticals may shift in a big way. So always work with a specialist. Talk to your doctor. Look for help. Find a way to get better. But recognizing that you can get better and understanding where your stiff neck and pain and chronic discomfort is coming from, all of these can help. And do include movement practices like snake and turtle, and like the video that will be linked to this, which is just a practice series of these movements that I was discussing. should be no more than 10 or 15 minutes. Include them as part of your daily life so that your body can allow circulation to heal as well. And make larger changes that can allow these problems to disappear on their own. I hope that you have a wonderful day and do find relief quickly, and enjoy your training.